Okay, yes, yes, yes. So she's supposed to be one. I told her, I said, I know that I'm sure that you're gonna want to see my yes. It is gonna higher than last year. Right, right. Yeah.
How are you? I just had class.
And you're
I started to say what we just did, just make sure it's on the fire act. I would say if you're taking a mic when you're trying to talk.
you know, but we decided we're just even though I get asked all the time, how do you know? I mean, they just take on the back. You're conscious, but I just think you will know clearer if I were there. So that's what
We turned up that volume on that mic quite a bit, so you can hear what you're saying. You guys can talk clearly.
But thank you.
Well,
I'm never gonna explain that. Oh, yeah.
But I said everything.
Thank you.
Democratic politics, realizing that then
I was at
why does it take or as long as like that, and then you have this and that everything one of the old IBM
You know what
Nobody needs to be different.
and then at the end of the yes, and then
Yeah, they deal with all.
Yeah, I gotta figure out
They don't have anything to do. I mean, I've heard him speak. I talked with him. They've been speaking for a couple of months. And it was about the time. Yeah, sometimes I watch it online. It's all on exactly what they are open. Sounds like they're going to be Saturday. I got a bunch of it, so I'm going to get more. No, that's all the carriers are yeah, he asked me. I don't remember when he was ago,
All right, if you go ahead and have a seat, we'll get started. Still not loud enough? You getting there? Nice. Just keep doing that whenever I get too quiet. So, good evening. My name is Bruce Arrett. I'm General Counsel for Brazos County. We're here tonight at the first ever question and answer period for elections. We've had a number of questions lately. We wanted to get together, answer those questions, and address any new ones that you might have. We have a pretty good crowd tonight, so be respectful of each other. If you would be patient, let people finish their questions. What I thought we would do is allow each person one question to start off with. If you have a follow-up question because of the answer that you got, let's do that then. But then we'll move on and let somebody else ask a question, and we'll keep going around until all the questions are answered, or 7:30 p.m., whichever occurs first. If we don't get all the questions answered and this has gone well, then we will try to schedule another event like this. And then for those of you who are interested, this is being recorded and it'll be posted on the county website after this. We're going to start off, we've had a number of questions that have been repeated, and so Ms. Hancock is going to start off with a short presentation to address the questions that we've been getting regularly, and then I'm sure that you will have other ones that we will answer after that. I would encourage you to help us make this go well, because then we might do it again. If it doesn't go well, then you will have affected people in years to come to have the same opportunity. So I appreciate your patience, appreciate your being nice to each other. Thank you.
Good evening. In preparing for this, it was kind of hard because I didn't really know what was going to be asked. So we decided to just go back and look at some of the questions that have been put forth, and we wanted to talk about some of those questions. But first, I want to introduce the lead staff in my office. I think sometimes it helps when you can put a face with a name. And so first we have Kathy Schutze. She's the voter registration coordinator. Kathy, how long have you been in voter registration?
Oh, since 2008.
So 2008. And then Regina White is the assistant voter registration coordinator. And she has been here in voter registration since 2008. So then for elections, we have our elections coordinator, Crystal O'Con, who has been in elections for close to 20 years. Paul Velasquez is the assistant elections coordinator, and he is the ballot by mail clerk, and he has been in elections for about 7 years. Then for equipment, Ray Rodriguez is the newest member of our team, but is not new to elections. Ray is our warehouse manager, and he has 9 years experience in elections as an assistant and as an elections administrator in another county. And then we have from our IT department, Anthony Lane, who does our programming and balloting. So in a little while, when we open up to the question and answer session part of it, they'll all come up front, so that way we can get everyone's questions answered. So how do we secure our elections in Brazos County? So if you ask me, it's like putting a puzzle together. There's not just one thing that makes the election secure. It's not just the equipment. It's not just staff. It's not just things like that. It takes all of those things together to make it secure and run like it's supposed to. So to me, some of the main things are staff, and not just county employees, but our judges, clerks, and poll watchers that come as recommendations from the parties. And then we also have certified equipment through federal certification and state certification. Then we do extensive testing for every election, and then we verify our results at the end. My new motto is trust but verify. So I think we have to trust our process, but we don't just trust it blindly. We have to go, be sure that we verify the things at the end and make sure that everything is as it was supposed to be. So when we talk about staff, there are 3 different areas for this. So we have county employees, which are our administration staff, and then so we have 3 dedicated IT department staff members who they do other things for the county, but they are dedicated to elections, and they do all of our IT support for elections. And then we have our voter registration staff who they work tirelessly year-round to be sure that our voter registration rolls stay up to date, stay clean, stay current with the laws, and make sure that we have our rolls purged and managed as the best we can. Then we have our warehouse where we have the equipment is stored. The warehouse has a secure door, hard read only, and security cameras. And so we keep our equipment under the tightest security possible. Now when it comes to election workers, I only have a staff of, there's 10 of us here in the office, and so we can't be everywhere on election day. We have currently 28 locations, and so for us to be in all those locations, it's impossible. So the way we work our elections, the law requires is that we have equal representation in our polling places from both parties. So both parties nominate those workers, and so those workers come from our community. They're your friends and your neighbors that live in your communities, and so those are the people that you see when you go to the polls. That's judges, alternate judges, and clerks. All of that comes from both of our parties. They make nominations, and we pull from that list for workers for early voting and election day. Now, poll watchers, that's something that I don't know that people would really think that is an important part of elections, but it is. We get a lot of really good feedback from poll watchers. Sometimes our parties will send us their poll watchers notes, letting us know where there may be some issues or some shortfalls, some ways that we can better train our workers to be sure that they know everything that they're supposed to. So poll watchers are also an intricate part of elections and the integrity of our elections. So our voting equipment is certified on the federal level and on the state level. I have links here, and so they have gone through the process. They have to pass testing, be vetted. Every change that they make to those systems has to go through certification. It's not just once the equipment gets certified. Any changes, no matter how minor, has to be certified every time. And then to keep our equipment up to date, we do our regular maintenance, we do updates and necessary repairs. After every election, sometimes there's equipment that's malfunctioned or maybe it's having paper jams, we'll send that in to have it repaired. I know there was a question on how we update and do new software on our equipment. Those updates are done either by HART. Either we have to send all of our equipment to HART and they do it, which comes with a pretty hefty price tag, or they send us all the new cards. We have to open the back of every one of these machines, take the current card out and replace it with a new card. So that is not anything that's done electronically or through the internet or any update like that. Those are all hands-on physical things that we have to do to keep that equipment updated. And then it is stored in a secure climate controlled location. And then we also have a strict chain of custody of what happens with each piece of our equipment. Let me go back. So I want to talk a little bit about each piece of our equipment. So this is the poll pad, and I know all of you vote, so I know that you've all seen these. And the poll pad is connected to a Verizon MiFi. This is the only piece of equipment in our polling place that is connected to the internet. We're required by law to be run in real time. So we have to, this poll pad talks to the computer at our office, And then we disseminate that information to all the other poll pads. And that way, you can't come to our office and vote, and then go out to CSU and vote, or go out to, Milliken and vote. That keeps you from being able to vote in more than one location. And so by law, we are required to run real time. And like I said, that is the only piece of equipment that is attached to the internet. Now this is our controller. This piece of equipment issues your access code. So you'll get your slip from the poll pad, you'll come over here to the controller, they issue your access code. Your access code, all that is it ties you to your ballot precinct, your polling precinct. So that way you get the correct list of things that you're supposed to vote on. Because what I vote on may not be the same thing that you vote on. Not everyone is allowed to vote. You have to live in that jurisdiction to be able to vote on certain races. So your voting precinct ties you to those different races. And so this is standalone. It is not connected to the internet. It does not have a modem in it. It sends the information to the Duo. This is the voting machine that you go to. The way it sends that information is through this daisy chain cord. Again, I'll stress, these are not connected to the internet in any way. They are not Wi-Fi enabled. They do not have modems. So the controller sends the information for every ballot style to the Duos. So when you put in your access code, it pulls up only the races that you get to vote on. And so this is where you would put in your access code, place your votes, and then your paper would print out, and then that would be your ballot. You would take your ballot and put it into the scanner. Again, this scanner is not attached to the internet. It does not have a modem. This information does not go anywhere else but right here. So you'll take your paper ballot and you put it in this machine, and all it does basically is scan that machine, makes an image of that machine, and counts your votes. This machine does not count by any kind of barcode or anything like that. Your votes are counted by what they call OCR. It reads what is printed on your ballot. We're going to talk a little bit about the QR code later, but that has nothing to do with your ballot. So this machine, your ballot is scanned. There is a digital image that is kept in here. So we have a paper ballot. We have media in this storage right here where your ballot is kept, and then also on the machine itself. So we have a triple redundancy of your ballot. So if something happens, we have several different ways to pull that information later. Your ballot then falls down into this bag. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a bag in here. All the ballots fall down in here. We started a new process last year of we have trackers on all these bags. So at the end of the night, once the judge pulls this bag out, they put the flap, they zip it up, and then they put the seal, the pre-numbered seal that we have on there. If that tracker goes somewhere that it's not supposed to, then we'll know that that bag has gone out of its normal route. So that is a new security feature that we put in place last year to be able to track our ballot bags. And again, I want to stress, none of this election equipment is on the internet. The next important part of being sure that we have a secure election is testing. So there are things that are required by law that we do to make sure that all of our equipment is working properly. So we do, before we do any kind of test out for the public, we do in-house testing to make sure after the ballot is prepared, we do all the proofing for language, for spelling, things like that. And then we start in-house testing where we do different kind of voting to make sure the machine is running right. Then we do our first public test. We have to do our first public test before 45 days before the election. That is because we have to send out military ballots 45 days before the election. So we've already had our public test. We had it last week. It went fine. We didn't have any problems. We didn't have any discrepancies. And so And a public test is where we do a predetermined test deck. I've been asked, why do we do a predetermined test deck? Why don't we just let people come in and vote on stuff and then see how it comes out? By law, every race has to get a vote. Every candidate has to get a vote. There has to be an over and an undervote in every race. So there is a method to doing the test. So, and that is to make sure that the machines are reading everything properly. That, somebody that that you left off, didn't cast a vote for, that person didn't get a count. So there's stringent testing for the public test, and then for the second test, we do the same test again. And that's to make sure that our database, there's not been any manipulation of the database since the previous public test. So we've had our public test, we have our second test, we know there are no changes. If there's any changes to that database, then our second test will fail. And so we'll know that there's been some kind of manipulation or anything, something like that. And then after our second test, the second test is done immediately before we start counting any ballots. So before we start processing any early voting or ballots by mail. We have to do that second test when there are still 0 counts in the election. Then after we've done all of our election day process, we've counted early voting, we've counted mail, and we've counted election day, then that night when we finish up, our last duty is to do one final test. We have to do a third test to make sure that since the public test and the second test, there has not been any changes in that database. So, like I say, we have stringent testing to be sure that there are no changes. So how do we verify results? For early voting, every day our judges call in with counts. We verify the number that we have on the poll pad. So Kathy's able to print us reports every day showing how many people voted in every location. And we compare those to what the judge calls in that comes off the scanner for the amount of ballots that have been processed. Sometimes that is different. We voted for 20 years, all electronically. Our people are still learning that is your official ballot. That is not a receipt. So if you see anybody, remind them, that is your official ballot. Please put it in the scanner or it doesn't count. Last election, we had a couple voters who refused. That was their ballot and they were keeping it. So in essence, they really didn't vote. So there is sometimes a discrepancy in the numbers between how many people check in and how many ballots. If there's anything over 1%, then we have to do a manual count to make sure where the problem is and make sure it is that those ballots were what we call a fleeting voter. For election day, at the end of the night, we do the same thing again. We check the number of people who checked in against the number of ballots, and then we also check that against the scanner. When the scanner's turned in at central count, we check all those numbers again before any of those before the media is uploaded and tabulated to get our results at the end of the night. Then we print all required tapes. All of those are done after the fact. Some of those tapes are really long. For us, we have 109 precincts. This time, if you look at our ballot, the Republican ballot is a 4-page ballot, 2 pages front and back. And if you think about 109 precincts, printing those results precinct by precinct, it takes us about 3 spools of tape to be able to print those off. So we don't print the precinct by precinct tape until after the fact. Election night, all the judges print is a summary tape. Then we also do a reconciliation, which is a form that's prescribed by the state that basically takes the number of people you had checked in against the number of people that we had, the number of ballots that we had, and we look at that by location, not just overall, but by location to see if we have any deficits in any of those locations. And then we also do a partial manual count. The law requires that we do a hand count of a certain percentage of our ballots after the election. So what the law says is it's 1% or 3 precincts. So the state sends us a randomly selected number of precincts and 3 precincts, and we count those. In the November election, just to help everybody's peace of mind, we requested that the Secretary of State's office allow us to do additional, or what we call an expanded partial manual count. So we did 6 precincts. So we did the 3 that the state sent us, and then we had both party chairs come in, or a representative from both parties, and the general counsel, and we cut a piece of paper apart with every precinct on it, and then the 3 of them drew out the 3 additional precincts. And so that was the way that we drew those precincts in a random manner. So this is the reconciliation form. We have to do 2 of these. We do one on election night for the unofficial totals, and then we do one after the canvass, after the official totals, just to show if there was any difference. At the top is your comparison between people and ballots, and then at the bottom it gives you like how many ballots by mail that we had that either weren't returned or were surrendered at the polling location, and then how many provisional ballots were not counted. The partial manual count, again, I've talked about this pretty much already. For November, we did the expanded, and I expect that we'll make that request of the Secretary of State's office every election to be able to expand that count, to be able to, to count more ballots. And in our count, the law only requires for election day. So one of our places that was chosen for election day, the state will give us a location instead of a precinct. So Arena Hall was one of the locations that was chosen. We counted every ballot in that bag, not just that precinct that was in that bag. So we counted 758 ballots by hand. We only count one race, but we do count every ballot. The law only requires that we count the bag, but we went so far as to split those up by precinct. We hand tallied them by precinct, and then tied them back to the precinct report to make sure that those aligned by precinct, not just by location. So there's been lots of discussion on what is in the QR code at the top of your printed vote record. So the QR code is a security hash that lets the Verity scan know that that ballot is a secure ballot that was issued from a Verity duo that's assigned to this election. So there's no information in that QR code about how you voted, who you vote for, or anything like that. It's just a secure way to know that no one can come in and bring a ballot in from another election and be able to put it into that machine. Or go home and make a ballot. There's all kinds of scenarios out there. But that QR code is a way to secure that another ballot doesn't get put into that machine. Ballot numbering, so there's been some discussion of whether or not we should have pre-numbered ballots or if we should allow the machine to do like we have in the past. So this right here, this is not a ballot. This is only ballot stock. This is not a ballot till it has information printed on it and comes out of the machine. Yes, we could use pre-printed ballot stock, but I want you to take a minute and look at the information. I'm having eye trouble, so we'll move over here so I can see better. This is the human readable ballot identifier. So the serial number basically that is generated by the machine. And if you look at it, the first number is the device type. That's the kind of machine that ballot was generated from. We used a duo. In the Hart system, it's set as number 2. So you know that this ballot was printed from the duo. Our ballots by mail, I think the ballot by mail code is 0, and so if it's a ballot by mail, it's going to have a 0 in front of it. So it just tells you what kind of equipment that comes from. This number right here is the device ID. So this will tell you, this is the serial number for the piece of equipment. So this tells you what controller that access code was issued to. So this ballot is now tied not just to a location, but it's also tied to a piece of equipment. This number is the session. We only use our controllers one time per election, but if you used it for early voting, it would be 1. If you used it for election day, using it a second time, it would be a 2. We had used this one for testing, and so it had been used several times. But so this right here tells you how many times that machine has been assigned to an election during that cycle. And then this is the randomly generated number that is given to the ballot. So as you see, that randomly generated number has a lot of information in it besides just a serial number. It helps us be able to locate what equipment and what location that came from. And then when our stuff goes back to the warehouse, Ray prints the ballot issue report. So we print for every controller. So he'll take this controller and he'll print a tape that gives a listing of every ballot ID that was issued from this controller. So you could basically take that tape and the box of ballots that came from that and check every one of them off. And so we have that redundancy to be able to trace those ballots back and make sure that every serial number that has been issued is accounted for. This is a pre-numbered ballot. I had to get this from a different county since we don't have those. When the code talks about pre-numbered serialized ballots, they are talking about pre-printed ballots that have everything on them. And so they have a range of serial numbers. So say this office was given ballots 1 to 100. Then the judge would shuffle those to make sure they're out of order so they can't trace the ballot back to you because, you know, we all still believe in a secret ballot. And then the voter is allowed to choose which ballot they want still. So you have to have some out on the table for them to be able to choose. And then any leftovers that you have to be maintained for the 22-month retention cycle. So any leftover ballots, we would have to house those for 22 months. So that's storage and a lot of extra expense for a lot of ballots that you wouldn't have used. So the same rules apply for ballot stock that is pre-printed serial numbers. They're assigned to that election, and so therefore those would be assigned to that election and in those records for 22 months, and then would just be blank paper that would be shredded at the end of that time. So at this time, I'm going to ask my staff if they'll come up and have a seat, and we're happy to take your questions. If you would, just stand where you are. I think we have the recording set to where we'll be able to hear the questions, but if you'll just stand and ask your question, then I'll repeat the question, and then we'll answer it to the best of our abilities. Don't be shy. Go ahead.
Hi. So I guess this was refers only or mainly to in-person voting ballots. You also explain on the mail-in ballots, how they are being printed, how they are being handled, how they come in. Is it a different process or very similar?
The process of how they're issued and handled when they come back?
Yeah.
Okay, so a mail-in ballot is a little different because it is a pre-printed ballot. And it is issued a serial number just like those, but they are issued in numerical order. They are not randomly selected. So the end of that number would be 1, 2, 3, and go down the line. But that is because nobody knows who that ballot was mailed to. And so those come, and do you want to know more about the process when they come back?
Yes, please.
Okay, so when those ballots come back, we check this to make sure that there's a signature. We check to make sure that there is some personal identifying information on the back of those that are required now, either the driver's license, social security number. If it is not, we try to reach out to that voter and have them come in and cure that. If we're not able to get a hold of them, then we email them or mail them a form letting them know that there's an issue. After that, the ballot board will qualify those. For a primary, the Republican Party, they nominate people to come in. They handle their ballots. The Democratic Party will nominate people from their party, and they come in and handle the Democratic ones. In a November general election, we work as one group with equal amounts that work together. And they qualify those, open those, and the ones that qualify then are run through a scanner.
Can I ask a follow-up on that question?
Yes, sir.
These are pre-printed ballots that you mail out?
No, but it's a generated number from the system also, but it generates them in number. It doesn't give them a random number. Like when you vote
Right, but you
here.
print them, your system prints out the mail out.
Yes,
You print them here.
yes.
And it assigns a range of numbers?
No, it'll start with 1.
Okay.
Like if we print 20, it's gonna print 1 to 20.
Okay. So along for your numbering ranges, for all your ballots, I know that all your different parts of your numbers, the part that is what you call the random number, is that random number, is it an actual random number? Are you assigning a range, and is it a range per polling location, per party? How is that range? I think there's a range, isn't there?
Well, not for mail, not for
No,
mail.
no, on regular ballots, sorry, on regular ballots.
On regular
Yeah,
ballots,
yeah.
yes, the machine will hold, it holds, I think, like 100,000 ballots per machine, per controller. And so, yes, those are randomly generated, and they will all be different because of the serial number for the machine.
So you could have the same last 3 or 4 digits
Yes,
on a ballot, but the first one
right,
will be different.
but this number will be
Got
different. So that's what makes it different.
And if you have 20,000 people show up at that polling location, you could have numbers anywhere from 1 to 100,000.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Why can't you have numbered in sequential order for in-person voting, since you're able to do it for mail-in and pre-print? Why can't you do it that way? That would be more auditable.
Because then it would not be a secret ballot.
Correct.
How they're random? How would you be able to tie a person to
Well,
a number?
If you do sequentially numbered ballots, if you don't have a paper to be able to lay out here, then you would know, like if you're the first person that comes in, you're gonna get the machine's gonna assign you number 1.
So how am John Q. Public? How am I going to know who ballot number 1 was filled out by?
Then it would be by the first person who checked in.
Well, you can still do that off the tape that you showed. It shows for each
No,
precinct,
that-
it shows the ballot numbers, doesn't it? And the
It-
order that they came in, so.
No, it doesn't show it in order, it shows it in numerical order. So they're not in the order that they're generated by the machine, they're in numerical order.
I think she's saying that you could actually put random ballots out there rather than have sequential ballots. So you could actually put out the raw stock with a pre-number on it and have so many at a location and randomly put those out.
Yes, sir, you could. But if you're expecting 500 people at this location,
Yeah.
you would need to assign them probably, I would say, 1,000
600.
ballots.
Yeah.
Because if they run short, you can't go to the next location and bring them ballots from there. Because they're assigned to each location specifically, so you end up with a lot of waste and a lot of money spent for things that then you have to house for 22 months and then just shred a bunch of blank paper.
Is that the main objection you have to what we're asking you at the Republican Party? Is that specific? Or is that a different? We'll ask that later, okay.
Yes, Thomas?
I'm curious, how many instances of, how many convictions have there been of any sort of election crime here in Brazos County, ever?
None to my knowledge.
Great, thank you.
Not true, not true. There have been cases here.
I mean, I can
They've
think
been
of one
prosecuted.
too.
No, there are cases here where they've been prosecuted and have been held accountable. If you want the name, I can bring you the name.
Yeah.
We need
And mine's
to
gonna-
switch to a question and answer
Yeah.
format, not a public comment back and forth format.
Well, that was public comment.
That was a question, actually.
Yeah, I clarified.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a question that kind of goes back to something that you
Stand
mentioned.
up, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. The question that I have goes back to what you mentioned about a couple of individuals did not want to surrender their ballot because it was their ballot. Okay, if it's my ballot, why can't I take a picture of it?
Because the law says that in the state of Texas, you can't have a phone or any kind of recording device within 100 feet of a voting station.
That's state law.
Right. And that is because we want to be sure that, we want to ensure everyone's secrecy to their ballot. And you may not intentionally be, I mean, if you take a picture of your ballot, there may be somebody voting in the background and you may catch something on their screen. You go home, post on Facebook, this is how I voted, I'm so proud, then you can unintentionally be showing how someone else was voting. So state law does not allow us to have cameras, video recording, anything of those natures in our polling places within 100 feet of a voting station.
That's what.
And we get that a lot with the students who are first-time voters. I think this lady.
I have a question regarding the voter rolls. And what I wanted to know is how often and what is the process to actually audit the rolls to make sure that people who are deceased, incarcerated, have moved out of the county or removed from the voter rolls?
Do you want to take that, Regina?
Okay, so there's different resources that we use. The first one is going to be the voter themselves. We use the voter themselves, any kind of notification from them. And we also receive information from both cities of Bryan and College Station. We receive information from the Secretary of State's office on a daily basis. A jury summons, we get those back to verify addresses. And then every 2 years we mail out new voter registration cards. So when those come back to us, there's a process of placing that voter on suspense and trying to get them to update their address, whether that be within county or out of state, whatever the case may be.
So if someone has either died or moved out of the county, unless you directly contact them, how are you notified?
The Secretary of State's office works with vital statistics.
Okay.
And so they can go in and cancel that voter if it is a good match. The state will do that. If it is a weak match, they'll send it to our office to
What's
do
a weak match?
If the name is similar but not exact, then it's a weak match. And so then we send out a letter asking them, is this information correct? Does anybody have any information on this? And go from there.
Do you use the national database for change of address? You do not? Okay. Thank you.
Trudy, you may want to mention that the local registrars in Bryan, College Station, and Brazos County, within 7 days of the date of death within the county, must notify the voter registrar through an abstract of death. We are doing that at least within 7 days.
Yes, I get those.
Of the death, and you do that every day. So as people die in Brazos County or they die in this county, and even if they live in Milam County, we notify the county clerk or the election administrator there, the voter registrar there, of that death.
Thank you. Are the e-poll books verified or certified? And if so, by whom?
Yes, they are. The company that we got it from, No Inc., they work in conjunction with the Secretary of State's office. And, it's an application that's on there, and every so often they have to get that, they'll make updates to that application. And they will, it has to pass the smell test with the Secretary of State's office and get certified before we can use it with them. Yes?
How does our system or the state prevent or detect multiple voting in like multiple counties, multiple states? How would that be detected and prevented?
Are you asking if, like, say you were registered here in Texas and registered in Oklahoma and registered in?
In both, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. when you're registered here and then you move out of state, the state that you move to, when you get registered there, they send a notification to the Secretary of State's office and they then forward it to whichever county that voter was previously registered in. And from that, we'll also cancel them because they've moved to another state.
Big follow-up, if he uses a same-day registration there, at the new location, you wouldn't know this unless your election is over by then.
Right.
How would that then be handled? Or even detected?
That's a good question. I don't.
We have been contacted by other states that had information that some of the states that have same-day registration, they had someone vote there and vote in Texas. And so they asked for information. We send them whatever documentation, then it would be up to them to follow through whether or not they prosecute it.
There's no automatic system in place that detects these instances.
Yes, ma'am.
When you have an early voting person who is registered in another county and they're given a limited ballot, yeah. What precinct number is assigned to that ballot so that when you start looking at precincts across ballots that you it's not identified as one of Brazos County's precincts?
We use 500 and above for our limited ballots. And we code those. We have a presidential only ballot, which has nothing on it but the president. We have a federal ballot, which will have any federal races. Then we have one that has federal and state races that anyone in the state of Texas can vote on. And then we have a couple of different ballots that because we have our state rep crosses lines, so we have a couple of different races there, a couple of different ballots there, and then also the state member board of education. So we have to have those within. So most of our people, if they're not from an adjoining county, then they're going to get a federal and statewide ballot. And so, like I said, those start at 500, and every one of those ballot styles will be a higher number.
Lots of questions. I know you talked about the general election when you at the end of that election day, the primary, y'all secured everything securely. But what about the early voting when you go on for several days and you've got several different locations? What happens to the e-book, the scanner with the ballots and all that during those 3 days that they're open?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, she's wanting to know about the equipment and how it's maintained securely during early voting, because it is a 2-week period for a general election and for a primary. So at the end of the night, the judge will print out a report from the scanner. They leave that attached. Then they close everything, they lock it, they put seals on that. These kind of seals we put through the door so they can't be opened. So then we know whether or not there's been any tampering. That scanner is locked onto that ballot box, and so it cannot be removed from that ballot box. And so then the next morning, they come in, they verify the seals on all the equipment to make sure they still match the seals that they logged the night before. They open up all the equipment, they open the scanner, and make sure that that tape is still affixed and those numbers still match the numbers from the night before. Yes, sir.
First of all, thanks for doing this. I mean, it has to be said, thank you. I had to write this down.
Okay.
But
is it going to be long?
There's 3 pages there. It's not, but it's a good, it was an opportunity from what you just said. So, does every employee have their own credentials and log in for all the election equipment that they use? I mean, do they have, is there one login and one password for everything, or do you all have your own passwords to get into different pieces of equipment?
We have an administrative password, and then the judges are issued a password. So we use an administrative password that would be different, and no, we use the same one. It's not.
Okay.
did you wanna clarify on that?
So we give an we give an administrative password per election. So every election we can make it different. But the password for the judges who open and close it can be the same, or we'll change it up every once in a while, but we put that into their equipment. So they'll have that password with them. So they can't go far with that password. All they can do is open and close.
Just as a follow-up to that, how can we tell if Trudy opened it or you opened
You can't. The only person that has the password is the judge, and like I said, the judge and if we went into the machine, then it would be a different password. But no, you're not gonna know. I mean, the judge is entrusted, like I said, these are your people that are in your community, whether you to trust. And so the judge is the only one issued that password.
To follow up on that, sorry, I just want to do a follow-up on it. What specifically are they opening? You're talking about logging into these machines?
Yes.
Where are they logging into these?
Yes, there's a password for the controller, and there's a password for the scanner.
The same one for both? The same rate per?
It can be.
What about the passwords on the MiFi stuff? Is that all? Who has access to the MiFi network?
No one. Those are generated by the MiFi itself, and so sometimes it's different every time you turn it on.
I mean, it's a hotspot, but who has access to the hotspot? It's just these machines and
just the poll pad.
but it's every poll pad, right? Do you have one of those at every spot?
Yes, there's one at every location.
And how, that MiFi is an internet Wi-Fi connection. How do you secure the machines that are connected to that?
The only machine that's connected to that is that poll pad that has a pre-selected file loaded to it. That machine does not run based on the Secretary of State's the live database. And so it's a preloaded file that has the list of every voter in Brazos County.
To clarify that, the MiFi is on the public internet. So if anything that's connected that has a public app or has an IP number to it, so it's still technical. That means somebody could get to it from the outside. So how do you secure against
That is encrypted.
It is encrypted.
What's
We have a
encrypted?
VPN.
What's encrypted?
The Wi-Fi connection is encrypted.
Yes.
So between the Wi-Fi, from one MiFi to the next MiFi, those connections are all encrypted through a VPN?
Yes. No, well, I'm not sure I understand your question.
It's technical.
Anthony.
You have an IT guy here?
Anthony, can you answer?
I'm not a network specialist, so I wouldn't be able to.
So I do know that Kathy,
I mean, the MiFi has a password.
Right.
The MiFi has a password, and I have to put that in for it to connect. But like I said, it's not connected to any of that.
Right. No, we understand that. I have a bunch of technical questions. Is there somebody I can meet with later so I don't have to bore everybody with some very technical details about the connections? Or do you want me to just ask them publicly?
No.
I don't think
You can come to me. If I don't have answers, I can get with
Okay, I'll let you
and we can talk about
that'll work. Thank you.
We got lots of questions here. Carol?
Okay. The question I had, I wish that you would explain here how you verify, like when we get the database, you said that, it's just for Brazos County. Y'all have verified that before it's loaded in, and we have access to it from each voting location. Y'all know how many, what that database encompasses, how many voters registrars.
Right, how many registered voters?
And y'all check that before and after? How do y'all ascertain that we have the correct amount and nothing was tampered with and that they weren't, some slid in there that weren't supposed to?
So we do an audit of every location. We compare by location, not just overall. We compare every location. Like the day after the election, that's the very first thing I start, is I print a report that tells me at Curtin Community Center, 663 people checked in, 603 ballots were counted, or 661 ballots were counted. We were 2 ballots short, and then I start looking for discrepancies to see if there's any way for us to determine if there was some reason. Sometimes it's as easy as a provisional voter, that was checked in incorrectly, things like that. Sometimes it's that the person left. Sometimes we never know, so.
What I'm asking for is the overall database, I think it's to get to Paul's point. We have a file of everybody in Brazos County that's registered voter.
Correct,
Okay. You know how many that is,
yes.
okay? And so during the election, just to make sure it's secure, that nobody somehow has hacked one of the MiFis or whatever, and split people in there.
Right.
Y'all have control, how do you have control of that so that you know that that number didn't change? You know,
Isn't it reconciled with the
Is it?
Secretary of
Yeah,
State
that's what I'm
list?
getting at. Don't you have that?
So, yes, so we upload every night to the Secretary of State.
Yeah, that's what.
So if by some reason somebody was able to hack in, say they added Carol Nichols and she's not from this county, Carol Nichols, someone who is Carol Nichols comes to vote, they also have to have some kind of ID to be able to vote. But then at night, whenever we upload that report to the Secretary of State, because we have to upload every night, because they print a roster every day, then it's going to kick back that that person was not a registered voter in our county. So there are checks and balances that way. But then, if you're adding people to the rolls, those people still have to have proper identification and things to be able to come in here and vote. So, yes, sir.
You just talked about the cast rolls of totals per polling location. That's the first thing you check, right, after the election. Are these numbers published somewhere?
No, they are not. They're just in-house numbers that we use just for our verification purposes. I mean, that you can request them. They're subject to open records.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Hi, yes, so, and again, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate y'all doing the Q&A.
stand up, please?
Yeah, and thanks so much for being here and doing this Q&A. So Mike, as y'all are probably, well, the question is about the, how the heart systems are certified at state and federal level, but there's been other systems that have been, like in the Georgia case going on, where they've shown pretty much very clearly and demonstrated that the Dominion systems can be hacked at almost every part of its system, and they're similarly certified state and federal. So my question is, and maybe this is upstream from the county, what the county can do, is how can we ensure that our heart system, because there's no way to tell that, we don't even know that the heart system is even any different from the Dominion system, since they're all proprietary systems we cannot see and inspect the logic in there. So I wonder if there's anything we can do at the county level about ensuring that our systems are not like the Dominion systems and so apparently easily hackable.
So it also is going to go back to that state's requirements. What that state requires, what Georgia requires, or any other state, I can't speak to that. But here in Texas, those, they go through stringent testing. I know that both the Secretary of State and the EAC both have their documentation on file of what's required to be in a system. And just because it's federally certified doesn't mean it'll pass state certifications. At one time, Dominion was a certified vendor for Texas, and it is no longer. So there's also, there's that vetting. Like I said, just because you can do it in Georgia doesn't mean you can do it here. I think, Jody had his hand up several times.
I too will thank you for doing this. We appreciate it very much. You talked about the QR code earlier and explained that the information in the QR code is to prove that it is a secure ballot, a correct ballot, and I get that, but is it correct that the mail-in ballots do not have a QR code? Is that right?
They do not.
Okay. Why would one ballot have a QR code and the other not?
I honestly can't answer that, other than, that's a ballot that people will not just walk in with. It's a ballot that's generated that we send through the mail.
Which is a lot more chances for security breaches than one within a vote center. Anyway, then regarding the QR code itself, for the sake of transparency, why can't they just print on the ballot, it's a secure ballot? I mean, with something that nobody can read and nobody can tell what it is, it may have what you say, what they tell you is in it, and it may not.
Right.
We don't know. No one knows other than Art. So
Well, but
that's
you
what I
can-
would ask.
You can, yeah, you can download a QR reader and we'll show you what's in the QR code, but,
It doesn't work on that.
That's been done, and it says it's a security block on the code. You can't tell what's in it.
so, I'm not a graphics designer, but I could, redesign that ballot. If you just had writing, somebody could have a picture of it and do it at home and bring something in. So, to me, the QR code would seem,
For the sake of transparency, I would ask you to work toward a situation where you don't have to have some hidden information on the ballot. That if it's got to be printed by the ballot marker, fine. Print that it's a secure ballot. Fair enough?
Trudy,
hi, BJ, hold on, wait, Bob,
isn't it correct? The QR code he's talking about is printed at a machine.
yes.
Your mail-in ballots go out of here, and you're not taking them from the machine when you send them out. There's a difference when they get printed.
All right.
Correct.
Right, but if the QR code provides security if the QR code is there to provide security of the ballot, and it's not there for a mail-in ballot, which are usually the ones that are guilty of nefarious plotting, so why would you not want that on the mail-in ballots more than anything to verify?
Probably just an easily readable serial.
Probably, but you know.
Okay, so I'm, hold on. I'm gonna let DJ answer her question, then I'm gonna let Crystal come up and explain the whole process for ballots by mail.
I'm a new EA. I have only been an elections administrator since March of 2020. So I was very green when I took my position. So the purpose of that QR code, I learned in a way that in paper ballots, I had to go to court to have 22 ballots counted. That QR code is stamped with which machine it came from, that it was assigned by that controller to that election. You cannot re-put that in or recount it. So you couldn't take the ballots out of here and then cherry pick 4 or 5 of them and run them through an extra time because they all have a different code. You can't read it through a QR code because that's part of our security, okay? Now, we can't put an individual special code, we don't have that technology as EAs, on your paper ballots. So the security there is the fact that you're signing it, you're putting on personal identification. We have an early voting ballot board that is reviewing it. That's the difference between the two. It is a secure system, and the reason that I'm here is just because Ms. Hancock has a lot more experience, and I want to nip those issues that you all are bringing up today. So I want to see what I can steal from her, or what she'll share for me, so that I can go back to my community. I'm from Burleson County, so that I can answer all of those questions, because we feel that we're trying to be as transparent as we can so that you understand that we are here guarding it. But we're not the ones running the election. You're running the election. Our elections are for the people, by the people. We're not out there signing in the voters. We're not out there making sure that it's properly tagged. All of you are doing that, okay? So we're doing the best that we can. But thank you so very much.
I think there comes a time when you're gonna have to say how much transparency is gonna start costing security for your election. There comes a time where if you have everything that's out in the open, then you're not gonna have a secret ballot, you're not gonna have, things like that. Yes, we wanna be transparent and we wanna be able to verify the votes that are cast, because we want to be sure that everyone's vote counts. But at what expense do you, where's the best place to draw the line? Eleanor?
I also want to remind everybody, Trudy, is that QR code your choice?
No,
SEA?
it's the system.
So everybody has great questions, but you also need to think about where this legislation is coming from, and if you're not happy with it, address it to the proper authorities, because some of the items coming out of this office, the majority, are handed down from the state, so.
Can I speak, Trudy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I have stood up at the Commissioner's Court on several occasions, and I speak about the QR code because I've done research on its patent produced by Hart. So it's true, you don't have control of the QR code, and I think we all know that. But I think you're also relating information that probably Hart has told you is what is contained in the QR code. And according to its patent, it has two functions. Its original function is to contain the voter selections in that QR code. That's what it was originally meant to do. It also can be modified to put election information in it. Your polling location, your day, general information. So I think there's legitimate questions here about what is in that QR code. Because if you look at the patent, it can do what we're concerned about it doing, which is summarizing. It can summarize, it can change, it can flip, we don't know. And I think that's the biggest question with the QR code, because nobody can see in it. And there are people that have actually taken an in-camera view of it, and it goes to some really funky websites, but it also comes up secure. So it's kind of like nothing's consistent. So I think that's the concern is what, if you can get it off, that would be great. I think that would be great if Hart can remove it.
Well, that would be something you would have to take up with Hart.
Why do we have to take it up with Mark?
With Hart or with the state?
It's not from the state, it's.
No, it's the machines, it's Hart's desire to have a QR code on there, and we've allowed it to exist.
I work in a financial business, and we're required to have a written security plan, and we have to have very stringent IT rules. And one of the things that I have learned that I know is that I will never scan a QR code with my phone or with any device that I have, because they're extremely non-secure. And everyone knows that now, and I guess that's a little bit of my concern with having a QR code, is because you can embed in a QR code any type of false website, malware, anything. So you're putting yourself at risk. I mean, I go places all the time and I won't even scan menus anymore with my cell phone because I know the risk out there. And it looks like a valid QR code, but scammers come along, just like the gas station, it happens all the time, and they put something in there that will corrupt or lead to, so I could see where they could put information in there, and that would definitely be a security risk.
Balance. Who has the authority to take responsibility for assuring we have election integrity in Brazos?
I think we all do.
Okay, and that requires a follow-up question. Can that person check paper ballots to satisfy themselves that they have election integrity, or does that person have to get permission from someone else?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Pardon?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
I couldn't hear you.
I said, I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you wanting to know if, like, you want to come in and look at your ballot Can you do that?
No, I'm asking who has the authority, I'm gonna pick one subject only,
Okay.
mail-in ballots, who has the authority to walk in and look at them, to satisfy themselves if they have election integrity, who has that authority? And you said everybody has.
Yes.
However, from experience, I know you have to ask, everybody being me, I have to ask permission. Getting off track here, I thought Dwayne Peters had the authority to ensure that we have election integrity, but I got the impression he does not take on that responsibility. He passes it on to you and hopes that you will do it. But the question is, who do I have to ask to satisfy myself that paper ballots have election integrity? Since you said I'm the authority, and I have that authority.
Well, no, what I said was, we all have to work together for election security and election integrity. I mean, it takes all of us. I can't do it by myself, you can't do it by yourself, but your question of who can come in and look at those ballots, anyone can come in and look at those ballots, but you also have to remember that we are a working office. You can't just, no one can just come in and demand that at any moment I drop what I'm doing, no matter what it is, and have the ballots brought from the warehouse so that you can go, so anyone can go through them.
Okay,
So we can set up we're happy to set up times
I understand what you're saying.
when they can be inspected.
I'm the only person in Brazos who went to the trouble to do that. It's a 2-year process. When they're getting ready to throw them away, they allow me to look at them. So that's a good sign for Brazos that somebody can actually do that. But I was hoping that Dwayne Peters had the authority to ensure election integrity by simply saying, "Hey, Trudy, I want to look through the paper ballots," and you say, "Sure, Peter, go ahead." It's not that simple though, and I'm getting the impression nobody has the authority to ensure election integrity.
No, what the law says is that now those ballots are open to the public within so many days of the canvass for public inspection. But again, our office is an office with many duties. And so you have to make an appointment, we're happy to pull those, and they can be inspected at any time.
Okay, I'll attempt to answer my own questions. There's a window after 2 months. For the first month is anyone who they consider valid, which is a candidate, can look at the records, can look at their vote. They can go into and look at their vote any way they want to. Well known anyway. They have a very strict system for that. Okay, after the 1 month has passed, anyone can get a judge to give them permission to go and do the same thing. But you have to get a judge's permission. So in that sense, the judge has election authority to control election integrity. After 2 months, they might as well just throw them away because basically the system prevents you from looking at the paper ballots for another 10 months. And then at the end of 10 months, they throw them away. And I would like a system where anyone could actually look at the paper ballots during that closed window of 10 months. Now, to be fair, if you go to all the trouble to go to get a judge to give you permission, you have to present all kinds of evidence. That means the judge has the authority for election integrity because he's the one who decides if you can look at paper ballots or not. So that's all. So that's the direction I'm leading to. Is I really hate the system where nobody can look at the paper ballots for that 8-month period. So why not just throw them away after 2 months?
So prior to 2023, the law did require that those ballots be kept locked for the 22 months. After 2023, there was legislative change that said that you could make an open records request to come in and inspect those ballots. So anyone now, and prior to 2023, that box could only be opened by the order of a district judge. But the last legislature changed that, and so anyone can come in and request that. But again, we have to have staff to be able to watch that nothing has changed on the ballots. There's strict rules about how those ballots are handled and things like that. And so it just takes time, a place to do that, and us to be available to be able to do that.
I stand corrected. That's a very good change in the law that anyone can during that 10-month period can go through the process of getting your time slot to do that. So, and again, it's not like you're a swamp. I was the only one who did it. And it wasn't you, it was the,
And we are required now, you can do an open records request for, like I said earlier, those ballots are scanned. The image of those ballots are retained, we retain those. And you can do an open records request for those, and you will be sent a link from our from the public information officer, giving you access to scans of those ballots also. Yes, sir.
sorry, just quick, so when you scan them and store them in there, we can actually get access to the scanned ballots, the
Yes.
original scanned ballots?
Yes.
The PDF form, what kind of form are they?
Yes, there is a PDF form.
And it's just a different file for every machine, or how is that set up? Do you know?
Anthony,
Those scans are signed at polling location, so it's via the polling location.
Okay, but you put those online so we can review them then?
You have to do an open
you have to
records
do it.
request for
Okay.
those.
That's a huge file.
Yeah.
It takes forever to learn.
I have a question. If this is in regard to chain of custody, it was my understanding that the judges pick up, the night before the elections, they pick up their equipment for the next day. And so they're bringing home the scanner, the controller, the 2 poll pads, the 2 cases with the MiFi, the roller bag with the ballots and the provisional ballots, and they're bringing them home so that they can have them first thing in the morning on election day. So how is that safe and secure if this equipment and these ballots and so forth are sitting in somebody's driveway, in the trunk of their car, or in their garage overnight? How is that safe and secure?
You may. This is Miss Diana, she is one of our judges.
As a polling judge, we have the equipment, yes, and we pick it up the night before. It is locked up. When we go to the polling place, we unlock everything and set it up. What I do in my polling place is I bring when it's time to turn on the scanner, it comes out with a 0 tape saying there's no votes. I have my whole team come over and witness me signing the 0 tape. And then we even pull out the little box and verify that there's nothing in there. Then we, throughout the day, check the numbers. So no one it's 0, and there's 0 in there.
And there's seal. There's a seal on it. Which brings me to the point of, I read somewhere, but I don't know, even though I worked election day, that the black box does have that seal on it that remains unbroken, but that it has a hinge that can be removed, and so that it can be opened without damaging that seal and reclosed. Is that correct?
What seal?
The seal on the black box, the scanner, has a hinge on it. So that's what I read. And that you can remove the hinge, open the door, close the door, put the hinge back, and the seal would remain intact.
The box isn't hinged in the very first of the morning, because there's nothing in there.
Right, but
Well,
somebody
she's
could
talking about,
access the box.
she's talking about the hinges on the box itself.
Right.
So what benefit would it be for someone to take those off?
Well, if they're accessing ballots and taking them out or switching them around, or, I don't know. Why would you?
There's no ballots in there.
Why would you bother with a seal if there's no purpose for it?
This seal is for the emergency bin. This is not a seal, so this door locks with a key.
Okay.
This seal is only for the emergency bin. The emergency bin is for if this scanner goes down and we have technical problems, then they can open this and they put those ballots in there till the end of the day, and then there's a procedure for how those are handled. But it is locked with a lock and key.
So that hinge, you can't take that hinge off and open the door?
I've never tried.
I read that you could. So in other words, if it's vulnerable to being opened and for whatever purpose, if you're saying there's no purpose for anybody to access that, why do we bother with locks and seals? Obviously, there must be a purpose to protect what's in there from something, I don't know what, but if the hinge makes it accessible, isn't that self-defeating?
Well, we still have to have a box to house that.
I know, I'm saying.
So is your question during the course of the day, you're scared somebody's gonna take it
No,
home?
it's overnight, and you have 2 weeks sitting in these voting locations, right? We don't know who has it. They're in people's driveways, they're in Arena Hall as, I know that you said that Arena Hall is secure.
So if you're talking about for 2 weeks, all the equipment is not in someone's car for 2 weeks.
No, I know that.
It goes into the location
I
and
know,
stays there.
right, the night
Okay.
before election day, it
Okay.
is in people's cars. But generally speaking, doesn't that seem like a vulnerability that the hinge can be opened and that box accessed? There must be a purpose for the locks. If the hinge is self-defeating to the security of the box, then isn't that a vulnerability?
So I'm trying to understand, so you're saying I can hinge it open,
That's what
I'm just trying to understand. I can hinge it open and maybe put 30 papers more in the bag, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying we have a seal on there to prevent access.
No,
And
correct,
protect what's in there.
but if you
I don't know what somebody might do.
you stuff papers in the bag that wouldn't match the scan, I'm just trying to, it wouldn't match the scan papers, is that correct? So I could throw 20 more in the bag, but those 20 are not gonna reconcile with the scan.
I'm just pointing out what could be a vulnerability, but also the delivery. of
Okay, we're gonna go over, this is our equipment.
Good, okay.
Warehouse.
He's
gonna go over.
One thing that does relate to what you're gonna say, I think, is that the sheriff is the one who's supposed to be delivering the equipment according to this section 125.003?
No. Okay, so to break down what you just said, the equipment is not sitting in someone's car the day before election day. My crew and I will go and we set up the voting locations.
Right.
That is the scanner that is closed and there's a seal on there. There is the ballot box which is locked. There are the duos which are sealed. There's the controller that the judge will take home with them and that they will bring it back. And they bring that election day.
So the election judge is not taking home
All of this
anything
equipment,
except, only the controller is at the election judge's house, that's the only device.
Yes.
And the poll bags.
Yeah.
And the MiFi?
Yes, the
The
ballots
ballots.
and the box. Yes.
Okay, so.
And I just want to add that our voting locations, we have it verified that that room is locked. Only the judge has the key to get into the room, so nobody can go through that room. They lock it every night, unlock it in the morning. I mean, that's, unfortunately, vote centers are hard to come by. So we do have that in a contract with all of our vote centers. So early vote, the judge will go in, unlock it. He should go, or he or she should come together with the other party and say, okay, we're gonna verify. This is the scanner, that this is the seal that we put on when we left last night. Is it still intact? Yes, check, notate. Go about voting, do that for every machine that's in your location. Same thing at night. Then when they run their tape before they open that day, those numbers should match. They should take the report, match it to the day before and say 500 people voted. If it says 501, then we got a problem. So that's how they make sure nobody's coming in and putting in any ballots.
I think that it's very telling that the folks who are volunteering to work as election workers or on early ballot board from either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party are not the ones here with some of these questions. Because whether we're a Republican or we're a Democrat, if you have questions about how the election works and you think that a hinge can come off or whatever, then both parties need more election workers and we're happy to have you. You can see up front, in person, great.
Well,
There are many who are not election workers, so.
The only election.
I don't think so.
And I'm gonna circle back to the ballot by mail situation. I just wanna bring something to your attention. I don't even know. So when somebody applies for a ballot by mail, we verify that that person's a registered voter. We send them, we mail out their ballot. They have all the instructions, all the envelopes, gets mailed to them. When it comes back, we as the office, we verify that they put the correct they put their correct identification numbers on there. We do that for the parties. So when they come in and do their ballot by mail stuff, they don't sit there calling 3,000 voters. Then we take it from our possession and we give it to the party. Y'all get your workers together, they come together and they verify if that is that person who's voting on that ballot. They check the signature, they check the driver's license, the ID. That is their responsibility. We provided the ballots. So the parties, when y'all do your ballot by mail, I strongly suggest that you get those who have issues with the ballot by mail verifying, making sure that nobody's voting twice, nobody's voting for somebody else, put them on your ballot board.
Yep.
Thank you.
I just have a quick follow-up question, what Kathy was asking. So if the judges are allowed to take home the poll pass, is that right?
Yes.
And what other piece?
The control.
And the controller. So is that something that is statewide allowed by the Secretary of State, or is that something we just do here?
Since our internal procedures, it's just a way that, like, without the controller and issuing an access code, you can't use any of the other equipment. So that is, for us, is a safeguard to keep anyone from getting into the polling place. If somebody got into the polling place, they would not be able to issue access codes, vote ballots, and stuff the scanner.
I get that. And is that something that the Secretary of State has written up for our county as an exception? Or is that just something you decided?
I don't know that you would call it an exception. The Secretary of State has not, I mean, I don't know that they have.
Here's what I'm coming from. Section 125.003, delivery of equipment to polling places. The Secretary of State shall prescribe procedures governing delivery of voting system equipment to polling places to protect the equipment from tampering and damage. So I was just asking, is what we do here authorized by the Secretary of State, or are we just doing it because we do?
We follow the best practices, and every county has to modify those at some juncture. Some counties use bonded moving companies to deliver their equipment.
Right.
Some people do use, when I was in Robertson County, the Sheriff's Department delivered, or the commissioners would deliver for each of their voting precincts. So there are different methods that have all been vetted.
So is there a lot of choices you can make outside of the Secretary of State and outside of TEC? Do you have like some latitude?
I mean, as long as it follows the code, I'm not.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Question. Well, I have a statement. I was under the impression that when we started this forum, that the person gets to ask a question and one follow-up, and I was hoping that our county attorney might sort of referee the constant back and forth, and so as time draws close to the end, I would like that format to be adhered to from everyone, not just the special folks.
Did you be able to ask a question?
The question and follow-up. No, I said this is not a question, I just made this mistake, I was just asking you a request. Not a question, not a
Anyone
question,
else?
it's a request. Did you want my address and phone number?
Yes, sir.
That's what basically.
My DNA.
I'll wait till everybody gets quiet.
So do we have any other, yes?
Wait, we have a question up front first.
Yeah.
So your USB, sorry.
So
One question and one response.
Mr. Quimby has been recognized first, I think.
No,
Okay, very good.
I had, that's okay.
All is well. Regarding unforeseen circumstances, like you losing power in a storm, what's the protocol for how to handle the voting, or I guess, what is your emergency plan for vote centers or central count, that sort of thing? Central count would probably have a generator, but vote centers probably wouldn't, most of them. So, backup batteries just last a few hours. So, in the situation nobody wants, when there's no electricity and no batteries, what happens?
So we do have an emergency plan. It is not completely on paper yet. I'm in the process of getting that written. That's a new requirement that's out for us to be able to have a written emergency management plan. But I have worked with Michelle at Emergency Management about generators that are available for things like that. And then there are some things that you can't, like if there's a tornado or, weather, some of that, really is not a whole lot of plan you can do except for to say shelter in place and things like that. So, but yes, we are in the process, I'm in the process of working with emergency management to get our emergency management plan complete. I'm gonna go back to this gentleman because.
Well, if somebody has this question, go ahead, I'll come in after you.
So we've had times when the polling place was out of electricity because of storms and stuff. Do they get extra time added to the after 7 o'clock or whatever the time is? I'm trying to remember what the process was, because this is not unheard of that we've had this happen.
No. The batteries are supposed to last 6 to 8 hours, but that's going to depend on use. And so if they're used a lot, then it's going to be closer to the 6 than the 8. And so that is determined on, like if we have to close the polls, say at 6 or at 5 because we don't have any battery and we've run out of backup batteries, we don't have a generator, then we would have to ask a district judge if we extend that time.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go back here to see.
Well, I'm gonna change the whole subject on that. By the way, thank y'all for all of this, this is great. When you do the verification counts, you got the public count, second count, third count. Public count's pretty easy to figure out. Who watches the second and third count?
Any poll watcher can.
You have to be a poll group secretary of state with a poll watcher certificate?
Yes.
Come watch it?
Yes. After the public count, then anything else, it has to be, you have to be assigned as a poll watcher. Because there are live ballots in that situation, and so there are different protocols for that.
The entity that has contact with us for the election.
So we have, like, when we contract, like in November, there's, there may be 5 of us, 5 entities on our November ballot. Those entities get to bring a representative to watch that, but anyone else outside of, and that's because that's their election. So they are able to come in and supervise that testing, but anything beyond that would have to be a poll watcher. And I know that we do have poll watchers occasionally.
Just terminology. Are you speaking about the public and second and third tests or about counties?
Test.
The test.
Test.
All right.
It's like, I was a poll watcher.
So, yeah.
And not only worked the election, I was a poll watcher too. I wanted to learn the different aspects of what was going on.
So the second test is done immediately before we start counting any ballots. And so that's when there are live or, ballots that are voted that will be tabulating. And so that's why the law requires that at that point, it has to be an assigned poll watcher.
I had a question about the access codes that you said there was one administrator code that y'all put in.
The passwords?
Passwords, sorry.
Okay.
That y'all share. Is there a way to make it so each individual employee has a trackable passcode to see who's logging in and when?
I'm gonna leave that to Anthony.
No, it's just assigned to an administrator or poll worker in general. It's not assigned to an actual individual.
So there's no trackability to see who logged in.
As far as that, they would have to know that code according to whatever position they're assigned to. But as far as like tracking it down to an individual.
Ooh, I can't hear you.
I said, as far as tracking it down to an individual, no, it's assigned to that position.
So is that a money problem why that couldn't be created, or?
No, that's how HARP designed the software.
Yes, sir.
During election time, is there any outside contractors or workers that have access or are involved in that whole process besides outside of the election office, outside of your staff?
Not currently. Previous elections, we did contract with someone to predefine and deliver and set up. We no longer do that now that we have a warehouse position. And so everything is in-house here. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thank y'all all for giving up your evening, because I know that's time away from family, and that's important. Second, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about the phone, the security of the taking a phone into Trudy. You had said no phones. And I was a poll watcher, so I understand the need for not having that. And personally, I don't believe anybody in Brazos County or our county has any devilish means of going in and changing anything. People are just wanting to know, because I do believe that they think there are places other than maybe here or Texas even, that do have issues with their way of counting their votes. My problem is if we can take our phone in. I saw many, not just several, but many people pull their phone out to make their
Look at their ballot.
to look at their ballots, to see what they had planned to vote on. And we'd have to say, you have to put up your phone, here's a piece of paper, go outside. They still have their phones with them. We don't know what they have on their phones. Is there a way that we could just say, people, you leave your phones at the front before you come in? Because you can't, otherwise you've got a lot of Wi-Fi.
True, but that's something we can't police. I mean, we can't say surrender your phone at the door, or, leave your phone in the car. It's just, something, as it comes down to just the judge and the election workers having to be very observant and make sure that, and that is, I mean, we're a society that lives by their phone, and we do have a lot of people that come in with their, their information on their phone. And so handing them the sample ballot and asking them to go out is about the only way.
Yeah, you miss some of those though, and there are people with them in their pockets and purses.
Can I ask that?
Yes.
Okay. I've been paid. All right, this is a question about on your USB sticks. You have these USB sticks that you guys use. You got a lot of security tests that you run. Is there anyone running, are there any tests that you run to figure out what's on that USB stick, on that secured USB stick? Is there anything that we can do to make sure there's not programming on there, or anything that can go in there and do something to the machine? That's one of the ways you can affect the machine.
You mean, well, we program our media.
Okay, so the USB sticks are yours?
Yes,
Okay.
they're ours. Anthony builds the ballot from ground zero, putting in the precincts, putting in the races, the candidates, all of it.
Okay.
Then he burns all of those, we call it, they're a B drive. They're an encrypted thumb drive. He burns all of those. Then he passes them off to the warehouse, where Ray predefines all the equipment. And so those V drives leave the programming room in a secure box and go to the warehouse, where then they're uploaded. So for them to be able to upload, to program the equipment, he puts in the B drive, but then he also has to have this, which is an electronic key. We have to have a physical key to open the door to be able to put the thumb drive in there, and then you also have to have this electronic key that's assigned to that election that will allow that information off that thumb drive to be uploaded to that piece of equipment.
Excellent, that's good. And we do all that here in-house? That doesn't, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I have a follow-up. So we do all that in-house?
Yes.
None of that, the media doesn't come from Hart, none of the programming comes from Hart, we do all that on there?
We do all of our programming in-house.
Excellent.
Did you have a question?
Is it a new thumb drive every election?
No.
No, those V drives are just used just to transport election data, and they're locked up. And each time you burn a V drive, it has an election ID that's tied to that. So you can't reuse a V drive as far as like with the same election on it.
I have one more question. No one else. All right, just one, I have one more for here. When you do an audit, when you go back and do your final audit to determine whether there's anything funny going on, do you go back to the original ballots, count the votes there, and see if they match the tallies for that area, or are you reading the readouts
When we
from
do the
machine.
partial manual count, when we physically count the ballots after the election?
Well, when, I'm not, you have several different, I'm not sure where you do this, but at some point you go in and insert it and say that we've done a test to say the ballots match what's been reported.
Right.
Do you actually go back to the original ballots and count the votes and then see if that's what shows up in the tally? Or are you reading what the tally result says and matching that up with the final tally?
For the partial manual count, when we physically take those ballots out of the bag, sort them and count those, we tie those back to the tapes that come off of those machines. And to the printouts. So I do the printouts just so we know how many ballots of every precinct we need.
Okay.
But then we use that tape and make sure that it's the same as that printout. And so we verify all those counts, say at Milliken Precinct 1 voted 25 ballots for this race.
I found a few places near you.
And so we take that tape off of that machine and tie those ballots back to that.
So, okay, so I'm not sure I understood. Are you actually counting, going back to the original ballots?
Yes.
Comparing that to the numbers you have on there?
By law, we have to do the partial manual count after the election.
That's-
And we have to start that the Friday after, like election is on Tuesday, we have to start that partial manual count on Friday.
Is that the example you showed, like the one at the MSC where you showed, where you just counted one race?
Yes,
Okay.
that.
So you only do it for one race and one location? It wasn't the three?
We do 3 precincts, 1 race.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
One last question, totally off the topic of electronics. I think you've answered, but I missed it. When you get information back from the cities, the counties, the jury lists, the NIL, all this stuff for various reasons, death, non-citizen able to participate. Could you explain the process that you initiate in your office to investigate how someone might be removed from the active voter list or put on suspense?
Can you repeat the question too?
I get her up there. They wanted to know.
So she's asking if we can explain our process of what process we use to remove people from the voter list.
It depends on what information that we receive. So we have to have, say we get our voter registration card back. We're going to match that up with what address we have in our system. If that address matches, then we're going to send an address confirmation letter asking you to update your address or confirm that you're still at that address. If you do not respond, then you're placed on a suspense list. If you stay on suspense for 2 federal election cycles without updating your address or voting, then you are purged off of the voter rolls. If we receive information from the cities, we send out an examination letter verifying that that is who we have versus the information that we receive from the entities. And then that examination, if you don't respond to that examination within 30 days, then you are canceled.
I have a follow-up for that.
Yes.
So how do you guys know if somebody comes in and they registers after the 30-day stop period before an election? How does the system know that they're late on registering and they can't vote?
Then so there is a, yes, effective date of registration. That is, first there is the postmark date of how we receive that. So if it comes in the mail, then we must go by the postage, the post office date. Postmarked, yes. So that date has to be on or before the deadline.
But what if they come to a polling location and they want to vote?
Then they're not going to be in our poll box. Because
They
that
won't?
information, everybody that, Kathy runs an official list of voters that qualified for that election, and it gets loaded up into the poll box.
Okay, so they won't be there.
They will not be there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when I worked the polls last time, these batches of new ballots, was supposed to be 200, I believe, each, right? And we noticed that actually they deviated a little bit. Some were like 5 more, some were 5 less than 200. Could that cause any problems with the vote?
Carol says for
Was
the
it-
judge,
yeah,
but
but-
she's the one that has to answer with those. So when we order that paper, it comes in packages of 200. The vendor is supposed to run those through a machine to make sure they are correct. We are still working with some of the paper that we ordered originally because we ordered a huge amount of paper when we first started. And we found out from our vendor that the person that they contracted with did not make sure that those were counted. And so it does make them off. We've told them to notate on, a lot of them count their paper to make sure it is correct. We've told them to notate on the form that they received 198 instead of 200. Just so there is a control of when it comes back to us, we see that there's not paper missing, but that the judge themselves did physically count that and they were sure.
Yeah, we had to do that. It's a lot of extra work.
It is a lot of extra work. Mr. Garland?
I want to follow the 90% thing. 90% of the reasons that voters get removed is because their cards, they're mailed to the voters every year, their voter card.
Every 2 years.
Say it again?
Every 2 years?
Oh, every 2 years. Okay, got that wrong. So that's why I'm asking the question. So every 2 years, and some of them get returned. At that point, you do what?
We send an address confirmation letter,
Okay.
asking the voter to either confirm or make whatever
Okay,
changes.
and then that's returned. But at what point do you put suspense on their name?
When that letter is generated, when we receive that card back, they're placed on suspense at that moment
So how long does suspense last?
for 2 federal election cycles.
4 years? Wow, okay. Learning.
We have processed over
9,000.
We have processed 9,000 return voter registration cards. A lot, not a lot. Some of them are the post office was incorrect in delivery, and some were that the people have maybe so.
Following up on that, I recall, isn't there something on the poll pad when it comes up as a suspense voter?
Yes.
I
So
don't remember what the process is there.
if it comes up on the poll pad as that they are on suspense, the poll worker is then supposed to give them a statement of residence to fill out before they cast their ballot.
But they.
Or at some point, yes.
So
But
we
when they-
instruct the judges, when somebody comes in and they're on suspense, you're supposed to give that voter the address confirmation, they'll fill it out, and then they'll proceed to vote like normal. If they don't fill that out, they're gonna continue to stay on suspense, and then we're gonna have record that they voted, and the judge didn't get them to fill it out, and we're gonna have a fight on our hands.
Then we have to start
Then
the
we have to
process
start all over, so now they're back on suspense,
I understand.
another 4 years, yeah, that's the
It
instruction.
just is the rest of the story from what Clyde was talking about.
Yeah.
When y'all wound up saying they're suspended for 4 years, they could be,
Could be,
but it
not.
depends on.
Yes.
As long as the person who's working the poll pad does their job correctly and gets that form filled out, they'll get removed and the suspense flag will be taken off.
I understand, I just wanted to get the complete story.
Yes, I don't have a question, but I have something I want to say. I administered elections in this state for over 40 years, from beginning to end. Nobody, until you have administered an election from beginning to end, has any idea how much work is involved. I don't know how Trudy and these folks do what they do with the limited number of people that they have. I just want to say thank you. Trudy, I know you to be a person of great high moral integrity. I know your staff is. I want to thank y'all for what you do for every voter in this county. I want you to know you are appreciated. And I think it's wonderful that you came here tonight and answered these questions, but more than that, the fact that y'all work so hard every day for every voter in this county, you should be told thank you
every single day for what you do, because Lord knows I've walked in your shoes and it's a thankless job. So thank you all for what you do.
You know, when I did introductions today, I didn't introduce myself. Always forget to introduce myself. But I have over 20 years experience in elections. I started in the place that some of you, I see some of our judges out there. Like, I started as a judge, and it was just something that once I started, it kind of got in my blood, and I tell people you have to be crazy to love what we do. So I think we had another question in the back.
As a follow-up, thank you. Is there anything that we can do as citizenry to volunteer to help your office when you have 9,000? It's never even volunteers, if you train them.
A lot of our stuff, we can't use volunteers because it has people's personal information on it. And so, like the cards we get back and things to put them through our system, they do have like a lot of private information on those. So we can't use volunteers, but just letting my staff know that you appreciate them, because I'm gonna tell you, I have one of the best staffs ever, so. Yes, ma'am.
So, y'all are wonderful. Mary Lynn, that was fantastic. Who is in charge of Brazos votes on the website? Because I'm getting calls and emails and messages about it not being filled out as far as, you know what I'm talking about, Crystal? Okay, is that you?
So it's not solely me. I give all of our updated information, election information to our IT department. No, not him.
I want to
One of our webmasters, I don't know, there's probably several of them. And I tell them, fix this, change that. But if they don't know the election process and where to change the information, then I have to physically go in and have screenshots of what location on Brazos votes that needs to be updated. So right now I do know that one link takes you to the correct list of vote centers but has the wrong name of the election.
I'm talking about candidates. There are no candidates listed. It has the positions.
Okay, so
The sample ballot is up.
The sample ballot's up, but on the candidate, but on the candidate, if you select candidate and then it's gonna say official list of candidates or official acceptance of candidates, there's a link and that's gonna take you to the state website. At that point, you put in the party, what county.
Yeah, I know how to
and all
do
of
that.
Yeah, so that'll take you to that link, yes.
You know, most of,
yes,
normal people, not us, normal people, they want it easy
But we
and they
don't
go to Brazos votes,
Yeah,
because
we
that's
don't
what we
put
tell
the
them.
list of candidates because they have to be approved first from the parties, they give us that.
I know.
And then we gotta do the sample ballot, it takes a village to make sure everything's spelled correctly, and now it's up there, so the sample ballot is on Brazos votes.
Okay, so I can send them to that and then just
Yes.
walk them through how to look it up on the state?
Yes.
Okay.
The
Thank
candidate
you.
tab on that site is more candidate information on like things that they have to file and things like that. It's not.
Well, what I
it's
looked
not
at today,
who's on
it
the
just
ballot.
said like state rep, blah, 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 and there's no names after it. That's what they want.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's what I'm talking
Sample
about.
ballot
Eleanor?
Judy, can you remind everybody of the texting system?
Oh, yes. We do have a new platform we've used in the last year. It is a platform where people can, on Brazos Votes, when you pull it up, it gives you a phone number. You can subscribe and get updates, like if we have a BDR class or if we have a polling place that closes, something like that, we will send out notifications. We don't send out a lot of notifications, so if you sign up, don't expect to get spammed all the time. But there is a way on there for you to text a question to a number, and it automatically takes you to different links on our website. So if you text that number, am I registered to vote? Then it's going to take you to somewhere on the website to be able to put in your information to find out. Or what is the closest polling place to me? And it's going to give you, it'll give you the link to all the polling places. So that platform is available. We hope it'll be really useful for our students who are really very good at texting and using their phones for everything, so.
I
think we're done.
Yep.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank y'all.
Y'all thanked us, but we have 250,000 people in this county, and there were 50 of you here tonight that were interested enough to give up your time to come here and get informed, and we appreciate that too, because a well-informed populace is the best protection against fraud. The workers and the people we have, that's our best protection.
Yeah.